So this is workshop number 3, video number 4, and we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the first step of an effective action plan. If you remember, the 6 steps to an effective action plan are what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, how you're going to do it, prioritizing the how, the steps that you're going to take, identifying obstacles, and then scheduling the action that you're going to take. So the first step, what? It has to be a SMART goal, which means specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. So I talked in one of the first videos about the difference between the 2 kinds of action plans. So if you have an action plan to clean up the warehouse, it's very hard to make that SMART, but you can try your hardest because it's not really a number goal. And when you have a number goal, it's much easier to make it specific and measurable. So if you're doing something that doesn't have like a number result, if it's just cleaning up the warehouse, you need to be very specific about when you would consider that action plan complete. Is it that there is no mess on the floor? The aisles are all swept, all the shelves are labeled, everything is in the place where you've identified it should go. You have to be very, very specific about what you are trying to achieve. And your goal, saying clean up the warehouse is the goal, but you also need to add kind of clarifying steps to that, what you consider cleaning it is complete, because everybody's standards are different. Someone may go into the warehouse and say, oh yeah, it looks great. Someone else may go in and say, oh, your shelves aren't labeled, this isn't picked up, that doesn't look good. So when you create an action plan just to fix an issue, you need to identify what will mark it as complete. Now for all the other action plans, it is much more simple, because if you want to increase sales, that is not a SMART goal. Because if you sell 1 generator or 1 air compressor, you've increased sales. But is that, is that the goal? You need to know exactly how much you're going to increase by. Is it going to be a percentage? Are you increasing sales by 10%? Is it going to be a monetary value? If you have open jobs, are you going to close all of those jobs, or are you just going to close half of them? You need to be very specific about what your action plan's goal is. It needs to be measurable. So obviously, if you're wanting to increase sales, it's very easy to measure if you've sold more jobs, because you have the date that you started, and then you can see if you've sold any more. Same thing with if you're trying to close out work in progress. You know how many jobs were open when you started, and then you see how many are closed or open when you're done. So it's specific, it's measurable. Achievable is one of the big ones. Like I tell you all the time, I am pushing you to set big goals, because big goals make you grow. They make you learn new things, they increase your confidence, and the bigger the goals you set, and when you achieve those goals, you want to set even bigger goals and even bigger goals, and it becomes like a snowball effect. But if, for example, you've sold 100,000 this year, and someone tells you you've got to sell 10 million, that is not achievable. I mean, it may be, but for most people, if you told me when I'd sold 100,000 last year that now I needed to sell 10 million, I couldn't do it. I would be overwhelmed, I'd be intimidated, and I just probably wouldn't even try. So you need to make sure it's achievable. If you sold 100,000 last year, maybe you sell 200,000 next year. If you have 100 open jobs, maybe you want to close half of them. If you currently make 1 new sales call a day, maybe you try and set the goal of 5. If you set a goal of making 20 new sales calls a day, that may be a little bit too difficult. So whatever items you work with in your department, you know what is an achievable goal, but you want to move out of your comfort zone. You want to move into that kind of challenge zone where you're just like, oh, I don't know if I can do it, but I will. I'm committed to hitting this goal. So that's make it specific, make it measurable, make it achievable, make it relevant. Obviously, if your goal is to sell more generators or sell more air compressors, you're not going to then create a goal to clean up the warehouse, because for you, cleaning up the warehouse isn't going to have any impact on how many generators or air compressors you sell. It would be a great goal if if you work in the warehouse. So you've got to make sure that your goal and the action plan that you're creating is relevant to the goal that you're going to hit. And then timely is very important. Some of these action plans will be covering your yearly goal. So you know that you have to sell so much in a year, or you have to get so many new service contracts in a year, or you have to build so many jobs in a year, whatever it may be. But if you go back to the example of work in progress, you won't have a yearly goal. You'll say, okay, we've got this many jobs open, I'm going to close them by the end of the week or by the end of the month. Maybe your goal is figuring out how by the end of each month you've got no WIPs or you've got no outstanding invoices. Whatever your department is, you all know what is a good goal to set. But you just need to make sure they are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. And then the final thing that you need to do is you need to determine your baseline. So if it's obviously if it's closing out all your WIPs, you don't need a baseline for that. It would be nice to know how many you've closed out, because then you can feel great. But once they're all closed out, that's it, your goal's achieved. But if you're wanting to increase sales, or I don't know, make more customer visits or something, or improve your first time fix rate, something like that, you need to know where you're starting from right now, and that is establishing a baseline. CRM data is vital for that, because you don't know if you've grown if you don't know where you started out from. So make sure, determine what your baseline is, and then you know whether where you've started from, and that's a great feeling when you can look back and see how much you've grown. So SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely.